okay, let's apply the old to new principle to our final example. So the hint says you're trying to get the blue stuff next to the blue stuff and the magenta stuff next to the magenta stuff. And the task is just to figure out how to do it. And that's an exercise in using the old to new principle. So we've got a sentence that ends with adjusting the soil pH. The next sentence, instead of echoing old information, stuff previously introduced in the passage, introduces new information, this thing, agricultural limestone, and then refers again back to the old thing. So this is the opposite of old to new. It's new and then back to old and then back to this thing. So we know we want to get the blue part up here. The next thing we need to ask ourselves is, what exactly is the relationship between this sentence and this sentence? How is this use of adjusting soil pH related to this reference to adjusting soil pH? So in the first case, we're just getting the information that it can be done or that it is done. We use soil additives to adjust soil pH. So what's the point of this now? Agricultural limestone, better known as garden lime, is made from pulverized chalk and can be used to raise the pH. So this is one way to do it. This is a method for raising this. So if we're going to put raising the pH up here, we're going to put something like one way to raise the pH of the soil is to use agricultural limestone, better known as garden lime, is made, okay, so the rest of my sentence is wonky, but this looks good. So it's used to adjust soil pH, one way to raise the pH. We've got this echoes old information and makes clear the relationship that this is one way to do that. But now what do we do with the rest of the sentence? Because it's obviously a problem. So there's this bit about pulverized chalk. This is just leftover. What do we do with the bit about pulverized chalk? I don't want to just cut it because I'm not an expert in this. I'm just trying to help this person rewrite what they're saying so that it follows the old to new principle and is cohesive. And I assume they're including it for a reason. Maybe this is just like an interesting info thing on a product or something. I don't know. I'm just going to assume it needs to be here and that it's not an irrelevant detail, but it totally could be. Where would we put it, assuming it needs to be here? It's made from pulverized chalk. So one way to raise the pH of the soil is to use, you might just put it ahead here. I don't really know what agricultural limestone is. But I'm going to put it somewhere up here, is to use this stuff made from pulverized chalk called agricultural limestone, better known as garden lime. It's an additive for crops by using additives. This is one additive we can use. Okay, is to use an additive made from pulverized chalk called agricultural limestone, better known as garden lime. This might not be the most beautiful sentence in the world, but it follows the old to new principle. It makes it clear what the relationship is. It's grammatically correct, and it's not terrible. So I'm happy. What do we do with the last bit? So we've ended on garden lime, and we've got another reference to garden lime. So we want to echo old information at the beginning of the new sentence. So how do we move garden lime to the beginning? Well, what's the relationship? That's our first step. So we've just been introduced to this thing, right? So garden lime is something that's added to adjust soil generally. This is a way to adjust soil. And what's the difference here? So clay soil requires the addition of garden lime. So this is a kind of soil we can use it on. So now we've moved from talking about how to adjust soil to when we might need to adjust soil, or what kinds of soil we might need to adjust. So garden lime is often added to clay soil, which is naturally acidic. That seems to work, or alternatively, we could, maybe it is often added to naturally acidic soils, such as clay soil. Either way, we followed the old to new principle, and it's pretty clear that this is one method for this, and then this is an application of that. Let's read it from beginning to end. Farmers try to provide optimal growing conditions for crops by using soil additives to adjust soil pH. One way to raise pH of soil is to use an additive made from pulverized chalk called agricultural limestone, better known as garden lime. Garden lime is often added to naturally acidic soils, such as clay soil. Okay, it's kind of boring, but it's cohesive and pretty easy to read. I don't have to do a lot of work as a reader this way. So, looks good. Now, one thing that you might be wondering as a writer is, does this sound repetitive, right? When you're using the old to new principle, you risk sounding repetitive. Garden lime, right next to each other, right? Maybe sometimes it will sound repetitive, but maybe sometimes it's just plain helpful. So if it's an unfamiliar concept like garden lime, it probably doesn't hurt to repeat it. It's only twice. But we've got options. Another thing that's really important is if it's a key concept, don't use a bunch of synonyms. If you have key concepts, don't be too afraid of repetition. Repetition helps readers process. So maybe if you give a piece of writing to somebody else to read, other than yourself who wrote it, so you can get fresh eyes on it, make it repetitive, not for the sake of being repetitive, but trying to follow the old to new principle, making it as clear as possible, not using a bunch of synonyms so it's clear that we're talking about the same key terms throughout. And then if your reader says, I just can't get over how this word is so repetitive or something, maybe that's a reason to, but readers probably don't find things as repetitive as you do who've been looking at them and writing and thinking about the same topic for so long. We process repetitive, familiar things easily and quickly. And the fact that there's so much cognitive ease in processing it can even make your writing more, or your reasoning, seem more persuasive or convincing for probably the wrong reasons, whatever that's worth. Okay. That ends our paragraphing tutorial.